The origin of Ben Drowned. Ben had always been a normal kid, a very big Legend of Zelda fan. Why? He even looked like Link, with long hair, rather wide eyes. But let's rewind back. Ben had always been a normal kid. This was a lie. This went for his parents too. His stereotypical parents, who always hugged their son in portraits around the house and made him lunch every day, were not so normal either. Kids in Ben's neighborhood always thought he was spoiled, since he got Zelda games almost every night. But they didn't know his awful truth, his horrific life behind his house walls. Ben sat on the swing set of the playground of his school, swinging back and forth slowly. He looked at his bruised legs. They're only falling off the playground. He had always lied to his teacher. Ben finally murmured to himself, They taught you to never judge a book by its cover. Well, they didn't teach good enough. He stopped swinging and lifted himself off the swing. He grabbed his backpack and started to head home. When he got home, his parents doing what they usually did when he got home, watching daytime TV. When his dad heard the door locked behind Ben, he turned the TV off. He turned and looked at Ben with his cold, unwelcoming eyes. It is 5 o'clock right now. You have to make dinner for me and your mother by 6:30. If you don't, there will be consequences, his dad said in a monotone voice. His mother and father got up and walked into their room, shutting the door behind them. Ben slaved over the food he was making for his parents for what seemed like forever. When he finally finished getting their plates ready, he looked at the clock. His heart dropped like a stone at the bottom of a pond. 6:39? He hissed to himself. Panicking, he quickly rushed to the table where his parents were already sitting. His father glared at Ben with a look of sourness and hatred. Ben looked away, holding back tears, and set the plates down in front of his parents in silence. He then rushed to his room. At 8:56 that night, his father ripped open the door to Ben's room, his face red with rage. "You finished cooking late," he growled. "I'm sorry. There weren't any clean dishes and..." Ben attempted to finish his sentence, but his dad grabbed Ben by his hair and slammed him against the wall. 10 minutes! He shouted in Ben's face. Ben was now crying. "I'm sorry," he croaked through quiet sobs. It was too late for that. His dad had thrown him onto the ground and began kicking him. "Worthless!" he shouted. "Lazy!" Ben huddled into a ball on the floor of his bedroom, unable to defend himself. His father shouted and shouted at Ben for what seemed like an eternity, and he couldn't make out the words he was saying. Finally, his father stopped kicking him. His angry expression faded to neutral, and he walked out of his room. Ben's world faded to darkness. Ben woke up the next morning, laying on the floor of his bedroom. He was wearing the old blood-stained clothes he had worn the night before. He slowly got up and limped to the kitchen. Luckily, his father had already gone to work, and his mother was out running errands. He turned and looked at the dining table. It had a game with a note taped to it. He walked over to it and saw the game labeled Major's Mask. The note read a simple phrase, "Don't tell." His eyes lit up from a sad, broken look to a happy, excited look. Major's Mask? He gasped. "This game is brand new. It came out 3 days ago." Eagerly ran over to his game system and plopped in the game. His eyes widened as the main menu popped up. He had made a file named Ben. He then smiled to himself and said, "I'm sure glad it's Saturday." He played all afternoon until his mother got home. She ignored his presence and walked into her bedroom. Finally, his dad got home. It was 7:34 p.m. "You have until 6:30. There will be consequences," he grumbled. Ben sadly turned off the game and made the food. When he was finished, his eyes reluctantly turned to glance at the clock. To his surprise, it was only 6:03. "Mommy, Daddy, food is ready," he called to his parents. His father emerged from his room with a somewhat satisfied face. His parents ate their food, and Ben staggered into his room proudly. A few days had passed, and his parents were having a party. Ben sat on the section in the living room on the edge of his seat. He had reached the boss battle, where he was fighting Skull Kid. "Ben, come out to the backyard and introduce yourself," his dad shouted from the backyard. Ben rolled his eyes and paused the game. He toddled out to the backyard. It was at least 11 p.m., way past his bedtime. All the adults were drunk, including his parents. "And this is Ben. He's my useless son," his dad attempted to say. Ben was used to these comments, kept a stern face. "Aw, he looks kind of cute," the adults said, gathered around him like chickens at feeding time. Finally, his dad picked him up and said, "Hey guys, watch this," and threw Ben into the pool. After Ben had plunged into the icy cold water, panic set in. He remembered that he had never learned how to swim. He splashed and gargled for help, only to receive none. He cried and screamed, kicked and flailed his arms around. Nothing helped. Accepting his horrid fate, he let himself sink to the bottom of the pool. His world was swirling around him, and he eventually floated to the top again, lifeless. The last words he had heard in his head were, "You've met a horrible fate, haven't you?" Years had passed, and the couple have already been charged for child abuse and were arrested. Ben's death was all over the news, but this news was now long forgotten. But only one person remembered was an old man. He slowly hobbled over to Ben's old house, which was abandoned. Arriving at the house, he looked for a key to let him in. To his satisfaction, he found a dusty key sitting under the dusty mat. He unlocked the door with a loud creak and let himself in. Looking around, he saw the old game system. He looked over at it and took the game that is currently in its out. It had been collecting dust over the years. He crackled with delight. "Perfect," he mumbled, and put the game in his pocket. He then walked out of the house, locking the door. And that was the origin of Ben Drowned.